We've known Mark for, he's done a couple of demonstrations for us in years past. And great pen turner, as you see some of his work here, and recently retired, and now he represents Easy Wood Tools. So I'll let him go. And
You ready to go?
So, and also he also did the Midwest Pen Turning Symposium 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Excellent event. I was there along with one of our other members, John Knapp. So
I'm disappointed not everybody was there. You tell me not everybody attended that event?
there was 200 some people.
We
Not
had three,
everybody from here.
when we were done, we had 307.
Was it?
Yep,
Okay.
we had 307.
Wow. Awesome.
So, well, first and foremost, thanks for inviting me to come out. Pressure's on now, right? Because we got 2 new people. So now the pressure's on to see if you guys show up next month, right? Because they're gonna blame it on me if you don't show up next month. So make sure that you show up next month. All right. So as Tom mentioned, normally when I come here, I do my own demos, and I do them for, you know, I've done at least one demo here on pen making. I think I've done a couple other another demo here. One might have been on rings, and then I did some for Glue Boost and a couple other things. Today's a little different. So look at me differently today. Today I am representing, and we're going to talk about Easy wood turning tools and carbide tools. Here's what's a little different about it. I do not work for Easy wood turning tools, just to make sure that's clean and clear out there. I just am one of their local demonstrators. I do most of the demonstrations in Chicago. I was up in Wisconsin yesterday. I'm down here today. So you can ask me any question about anything as we're going along the way. I'm not gonna just talk about tools today and anything else. I'm gonna talk about technique. We're gonna talk a little bit about design. We're gonna talk about a lot of different things. So if you know me, my demos are usually interactive. So feel free to stop me and ask me any questions. 2 other things that I think are kind of very exciting is I'm gonna stop at certain points, and if anybody wants to get up and use the tools, you can get up and use the tools. Now's the time to do them. Use them on my dime and use the tools that I brought so that you can try them, you can play with them. And then finally, just to give you a rough idea, we're gonna talk a little bit about acrylic turning. We're gonna talk about wood turning with pens. Then we're gonna go into some of the pepper mills. We're gonna do some of the chucks. And then given time, well, I know I'll have enough time for the Yorkshire Grit. I love Yorkshire Grit. It's a recent addition into the Easy Wood line, and I just love this stuff. It's a sanding paste. And then given time, and I'm here as long as you guys want, we'll talk a little bit about the new beading tool. Sound like a full agenda? Everybody excited?
Oh yeah.
All right. So first question I have is, how many people here use carbide tools? The rest of you guys all use high-speed steel, right? High speed. Okay, both. All right. So when you the people who do high-speed steel, you stick with high-speed steel because is it just something you've used for a long time, or you know, I just kind of want to adjust to my audience. Use high-speed steel
Because I have them.
Okay, that's a very fair answer.
And because I learned on them?
Yep. So I'm gonna tell you, so because of the stuff that we're gonna do today, and we're gonna be talking a lot about like spindle type work, I only use Easy wood turning tools, and I only use carbide. Everything that you see here, all the pens were done as that way. These pepper mills were done with the tools. The small little platter was done with the tool. All I use is Easy wood turning tools. So I cut my teeth. I think the last time I was out here, a couple times before when I was out here, I cut my teeth using high-speed steel also. And when I used to turn pens, I used to use a skew and get all that. I just find that I'm quicker and more efficient using the tools now that way. So are we all good? Any questions so far? How could there be?
As Mark's doing that, I'll mention that he is the author of some YouTube. It's called 10 Minutes of Better Pen Turning. Just check it out on YouTube. He does a great job. And some of them are a little longer than 10 minutes, but that's not.
So that's the mock on me. So everything I do, so my YouTube channel, I've got about 28 videos out there, and I do some of the stuff that you don't talk about in pen making. I've got a whole demo dedicated to gluing. I've got a whole demo dedicated to to drilling, to doing label casts, everything out there. And yes, the mock on me is, I can't do anything in 10 minutes. My first video I did in 10 minutes, and I branded it as 10 minutes to better pen making, but the majority of them go much, much longer on that one. And I do have 2 articles out that I had in the AAW magazine. A couple years ago, I got the cover with a pen that I did, and one that ties in more to what we're going to talk about tonight is I had an article out in the June issue of last year where I co-authored it with John Underhill, and we talk about casting, doing this kind of casting, and how to turn these castings. And if you're doing any kind of hybrids, I would only be using carbide tools. And we'll talk about that as we get into the techniques and stuff like that. So, basics of carbide tools. If you've never used carbide tools before, I'm going to go through the basics. There's a cutter head on. The cutter head on here, and there's we're going to just say for the most part 3 different tools that we're going to use and talk about tonight. This one's the finisher. It's got a round head on here. This one is the rougher, and it's got a square head on here. And then, are you okay? I mean, are we good for? And then this one is the detailer, and it's got a diamond head on here. What do you guys see? What's obvious about these tools right as I look at them?
Could you just rotate those toward the camera 90? There we go. We got a good look at them. Thank you. That's all we need.
They are inserts, but what's even more obvious?
The shape.
They're color coded,
Oh.
right? And so they all work the same, right? So if I go to pick up any of the sizes in any of the, I typically call them the round, the square, and the diamond point. So if I want to, they come in a whole bunch of different sizes. But if I'm looking and I want that quick look at what I'm doing and I want to grab my next tool, I can always tell it by the color. So I know that I can pick up the red one, and I know that I'm always going to have a round cutter in my hand. If I pick up an orange one, I always have the square cutter in hand. They still have the natural colors in there, but for me, all the tools I have are the color-coded ones. This is just a little, I'm going to do just other little tips and tricks along the way. All my tools have these little hooks on the top. I assume everybody knows why, right? So I went to Home Depot and I bought closet rack. And I buy the closet rack that has the 1-inch spacers on there, the that white rack. And then so I've got them up in my shop, and then these things just hook, and I've always got a nice 1-inch space between all my tools so they'll never knock together and stuff like that. So I just got the hang of doing this one. You can get these little hooks also at Home Depot in the hardware aisle. It makes it really nice. It makes it really convenient. So the thing I like about EasyWood Tools is 100% made in the United States. Their corporate headquarters is just outside of Schaumburg, basically, and then the tools are actually made down in Kentucky. And there's just something. I got to see a video at the Midwest Pen Turners Gathering. They debuted their new video, and they showed how they make all these tools. And you can't imagine that these tools are all actually literally hand sanded. There's a guy who pulls them out, and he hand sands everything on here. So I kind of like that aspect of it. It's all 100% made in the United States, and it's all stainless steel. So it's all nice steel. You're never going to have a problem with this one. So any questions on the tool? I'm going to ask a lot. Any questions on the tools? Go ahead, sir.
Carbide, it's all flat, there's no cup.
So I'm going to get into that one. There's 2 different carbides that we're going to talk about in a minute. This is the traditional one, and then I've got the negative rate cutter too that we'll talk about it. But these are the traditional. When I get into the reasons why, please remind me, and I'll make sure that I cover that one. Yes, sir.
First cast carbide?
I'm sorry.
Is that all first cast carbide?
You know what? I have no idea. You're beyond me on what I know.
Trade secret. They don't.
No. I'm going to be honest with you. If I don't know an answer, I'm just not going to make something up for you. I don't know. I've been to their facility, and what can you explain to me? Explain to everybody the difference so we can all understand it.
When they first pour it, and they cut the tools out of it, and then they take the leftover and they recast it and re-pour it, second cast and third cast.
Okay.
It sort of loses a little bit. It's still good, but it loses a little bit on the second and third cast carbide.
Okay. I will ask Chris at some point, and I'll know. I will answer any questions to the best of my ability, and I'm not going to tell you if I don't know. So the nice thing about carbide tools, if you've never used them, there's really only two things that you really need to know for safety purposes, right? So the tool wants to be introduced perfectly horizontal, right? So when I put it into the tool, remember if we use more traditional tools, right? The ABCs, the anchor, bevel, cut, you're always going to be riding the bevel on the more traditional tools. And you know, you'll pull them up and move them in. On these, I'm always going to introduce the tool completely horizontal on my tool rest. So what's nice about that is if I'm using all the same handles or the same size, I never have to adjust that tool rest. I know in terms of height where I'm always going to be. I'll start it off at the beginning, and then I'm going to get it into the height. The only other thing that you need to know is that the point up here, you're going to be wanting to cut on pretty much as close to dead center on the piece that you're turning, right? If I'm below or I'm above, I'm not getting an optimal cut. I'm going to get the optimal cut when I'm completely flat and I've got this thing cutting at dead center. Now, here's a couple other features of the tool that I like. Can you see here there's a little line on here? Can you see the line?
Right down the center.
Right there. Yep, and if I compare that to, I shouldn't have done this, to the bigger tool, I have a bigger overhang, right? That's a really nice indicator as to where my tool can be when I'm actually going into things. If we're going to be doing spindle turning, which we're going to be doing predominantly today, we're never going to really have to worry about this one. But it's just a nice little feature if you're going to be doing bolt turning. We'll talk about bolt turning near the end. I love this tool for doing any kind of bolt turning and doing the hollowing out on here.
You want if you go to a real deep hole, like a foot, do you use them tools?
If my overhang is fine, yeah, they make so I've got one. I think it was from the David Marks collection. I've got one that's probably 2 feet. Yeah, maybe even longer.
So the shaft is thicker than.
Yeah, the shaft is thicker, but I'm going to tell you this one, just in case I don't remember when I get to it. But, you know, most of my bowls I'm going to be doing fine with this one. And I actually find that I would much rather cut with this cutter head that's on here, on the bowl. It's taking a little bit less of a cut, but I can control it so much better. So that's a perfect segue. Sorry, let me talk about that too. If you look at the tools here, there's a little indicator on the tool. This one says CI3. That tells me what cutter head I'm going to use on here. They go from 0 to 5. This one is a CI5, and that's the biggest. And then you can get basically anyone. There's a nice little micro set for pen making and things like that. This is my favorite. If I literally, and I know everybody says this all the time, if I literally only had one tool to ever use, this would be the tool that I have. I love the 14, this is the 14-inch handle on here, and I just love the way that this thing is set up. So, any questions, comments, concerns? All right, let's start talking. So now the thing that I want to do is I'm going to actually do some first cuts. So I'm going to do what most people think are some of the hardest things to do, right? Acrylic. So I'm going to turn acrylic. And you're going to see I'm going to do the first set, I'm going to do what's called a scoop cut. So I am going to put the tool in and I'm going to move it over and I'm going to scoop it all the way out. When I get to about 3/4 of the way, I'm going to take the tool and then I'm going to scoop it out going the other way. And I want you to note that I'm going to be using the top of the tool, right? This point, the very top on it. So let me grab my mask. Couple things about shop safety and safety. I don't know if everybody talks about this all the time. I do want to talk about it. First and foremost, this is the exact lathe that I have sitting at home. I've got the black 90th anniversary edition, which I really, really like. And you'll see here, this is just a safety thing that I have picked up. I never turn my lathe off. My lathe is on 100% of the time. My lathe is on right now when I'm out here, right? I don't use the on-off button. I only use the speed to adjust my on off. Reason why? Because I'm doing a lot of different things, right? If I'm doing a pen and then I'm going to jump to a pepper mill or I'm going to jump to a larger bowl, I do not want that tool, the lathe, to come on and I've got a big bowl on there and it comes on at 3250. I'm going to run this thing at as fast as this will go to do my pen turning. So I'm going to turn it all at 3250. So I just never turn mine off, and I have that adjustment. A couple other things, I always wear a safety shield, and I'll just tell you, I'll point why. I used to just wear safety glasses, and I had the nice safety glasses, and I did have a piece of acrylic flip off and go into my eye. And I'm going to tell you, it was like 5 years ago, and it was the most painful 3 hours I had, just trying to get that little piece of acrylic out of my eye. But the thought of going into a doctor and thinking what they were going to do to my eye, eventually the crying worked enough, and I was able to get the piece out. The other thing is, how many people here wear masks and respiratory things, right? I think we were one of the first. It was kind of weird. You know, I used to wear N95 masks all the time. And then it was kind of weird. I know that someone saw it because then all of a sudden I saw the entire country started to wear it because I was wearing these N95 masks. And then all of a sudden everybody in the world's going, hey, if this N95 stuff is okay for Mark, we're all going to wear them. But no, in all seriousness, I always wear, I won't put an N95 on now. I do have one. I'm not going to put it on now because I'm going to be flipping this up and down a lot. But I do wear a full face mask and I do wear hearing protection when I'm at home. Yeah, I've got the big earmuffs, and I'll wear everything. I've been turning a little over. I've been a pen maker, almost 33 years. So, and I know when you look at my stuff, you'd think he'd be better. You know, after 33 years, he'd be better at it than this. But no, I've been a pen maker. I think someone can do the math for me. I think I started in 94, 95 is when I started doing pen making. And I took a class at a woodcraft, and I immediately went home, just like that, probably anybody here. I immediately went home, I bought a lathe, and then I realized, well, now I need something to drill them, so I got this little thing to do drill. And when I started doing pen making, they only did gold slimline kits. That was the only kit that you could get. It was a gold slimline. And there was no acrylic yet out at that point. And you guys will mock me for this. The most exotic wood, you go in the exotic wood section and they had king wood and cocobolo. And you go, oh my God, look, I'm buying this little chunk of king wood and a little chunk of cocobolo. And that's what I used. So as I said, I'm going to start on something a little bit harder today, right? This is acrylic, right? And most people think acrylic is probably one of the harder things to turn. So let's see how well I do. Remember, I'm going to do scoop cuts, right? So I check the tool here. I assume you can see it. I'm at the halfway point. I might just be a little high. I'm at the halfway point. My tool is going to go in as a scoop cut. And then because you're here, I'll do the cuts here, and then I'll recap what I did. I hit it with my elbow. Here we go. All right, did you see I rounded it pretty quickly, right? And it's round. Mm-hmm. I want you to notice a couple things. I do something a little bit different than I think most people do because of the way that I like to turn these things. So most people will take the tool, right, and you're going to anchor it to your body, right? And then you're going to hold it back here and you're going to turn. If I was given a pencil, I would never hold the pencil back here. So I don't know if you noticed what I did is I'll put the tool underneath my arm here like this. And then I'll put my pointer finger, if you will. That gave me really nice full control on that cut. I can get right exactly where I want that cut to be by holding it there. And then the traditional, right? Thumb over, on the piece here. One thing I don't know if you noticed, and this is just something that I tell everybody, when you go to watch professional demonstrators, the Jimmy Clues of the world and things like that, watch the way their body works. That's just as important as the tool. So hopefully, if you noticed that when I had it here and I made my scoop cut, I didn't just do it with my hands. My body just kept moving and moving and moving until I got to this other end, and then I got it, and I got the turn there, right? And so that's how I rounded it. And you can see here, I'm perfectly round. Now, no jokes. Really, no jokes when I said I'm perfectly round. Nobody. I got to keep you guys awake. So now the next thing I'm going to do is what I call a peel cut. And what the peel cut's going to do, I'm going to introduce the tool now. I'm going to take it at a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to catch this little corner here. Can you see where I'm at? I'm going to catch the corner here on a 45, and I'm just going to work my way across the whole thing. And now watch the difference in shavings, right? These were kind of like chunks, right? Chunks are kind of normal, right, when I'm going to be doing all my rough turning and blocking it out. So now let's watch when I get to tool rest. I let the tool come up to speed. So now I'm getting really nice shavings, right? So if someone wants to come up, feel over here. I need one volunteer. Anybody? Come on. Feel on this side where I did my cuts, and tell me if that seems pretty smooth to you.
It's very smooth.
Right. So
Good job.
well, thank you. I'm probably not going to need much more than 220 to start my sanding on it, right? So I already have this down. I have it down so it's relatively smooth. And anybody who tells me that, here we go, I've got one. A lot of people will say, well, you're scraping, you're not cutting, right? Have you heard that with carbide tools?
Yes.
All right, let's do this. Oh. That's not from scraping. That's from actually making a nice clean cut, right? So look at, it probably was 6 feet at one point, and I have it here. So if you start to do a lot of this and you ever have these are just other little tips on here. I always keep a golf brush up here right next to me. And then that way, if I get those shavings and they start to tie around there, I'm never going to put my hands near it. I'm going to use the golf brush, and I'm going to knock off all my shavings on here. So it's the first opportunity for someone who wants to come up. Oh, sorry, I did want to say that. I wanted to explain something. So the nice thing about these tools is there's no sharpening, right? Each edge gets between 20 and 40 hours of cutting. And it depends on what you're cutting, right? If I'm cutting deer antler or I've got a video out on YouTube where I made this aluminum pen. And this is just a billet of aluminum that I got from Home Depot. And I cut it with this tool. So obviously that's gonna take a little bit more toll on my tool. So I'm gonna get 20 to 40 hours on an edge. And I can typically rotate these things about 4 times. So if we do the math, how much time do I get on here? 80 to 160 hours, right? So I pointed out earlier on, right, that first cut, those scoop cuts were like this. And then that second cut, my peel cut, I turned the tool like this, right? And I ran it across. So when I made those initial cuts, the part of the head that was taking the most beating is this thing, right? The exact top. Well, then the other nice part about it is this tool is round, right? It really doesn't make a difference. I can go forward, I can go backward, I can go any way that I want. But when I made that peel cut, I then used the part of the edge that's at about 2 o'clock, right? So what I do when I want to actually then rotate this, I'll just loosen this screw, and which way will I rotate it? counterclockwise, right? Because then the part that got beaten up, that's really beaten up, just goes out of play. The part that was the former fresh edge now becomes the part that I'm gonna beat up on my next set, and then the part that was really the fresh edge now moved up into position to be that cut for that peel cut. Make sense? All right. Who wants to come up and try the tool?
Question for you.
Sure.
Can't you take that edge off and do it on like 6,000 sandpaper to 3,000?
To
Refresh it?
So people ask that question all the time, and here's my answer to it. You know, people do it on a diamond honed and things like that. I don't. I never do. And the reason being, no matter what you do, no matter what the diamond hone is, you're never going to get it as fresh as when it first comes out of the manufacturing. For me, the cutter heads are, you know, people use cheap and expensive. I think they're fairly priced, right? They're about $18 for a cutter head. And if I'm getting 160 hours out of something that I paid 18 hours, and here's my concern. I do most of my stuff, like, this is a John Underhill pheasant feather blank, right? I don't want a burr that I introduced on there to introduce on something like this. So the long and short answer of it is, I know people do it. I don't do it, is the best that I'll tell you, is that I don't try to freshen the edge on there with that one, right? For me, it's fairly priced at $18 in terms of what I have. I know people will argue, well, then you don't need a sharpener. You don't need a sharpening system at all if this is all you're going to use. But, you know, tell me anybody here who doesn't like going out and collecting tools. You know, we all go out and collect tools, right? So, yes, I have a Tormac. My Tormac has probably got an inch of dust on it, but, you know, it is what it is. So who wants to try the tool? Anybody?
Come on, Ann, get up there.
Come on,
get up there, yeah.
There we go, Annie.
Come on up. So,
This is
would-
Ann.
nice. I was gonna go, are you okay, Annie? Annie, are you okay? I was gonna do that one. Notice I didn't choose to do that, but I did. See how I snuck that in a little? All right, so what I want you to do, I prefer you to use the mask, but if you don't want to use the mask, that's up to your club.
There's
Try
extra
that.
tools.
So take a walk over here. I'll pull the mask first. So I'll put you in position if it's okay. All right. So what we're gonna do is put the tool up on the rest. However you hold it. Yeah, that's how I hold it. So I prefer the thumb to be there, right? Little 45-degree angle, and then we're gonna catch it here, and then you're gonna walk. You're gonna walk your whole body. Don't just slide. Walk your body towards me, and just walk it across.
Okay.
All right. So.
Oh, you want me to
You want me to
turn
do
it
that?
on?
Yeah, go ahead. And go. Yep. Perfect. You got that handle perfect.
And you say you can go backwards?
You can go backwards.
This is fun, you guys.
I need 1 second. I'm gonna ask about that carbide question while I have, see if they'll answer. So what did you think?
That was really cool.
Next person who wants to try it. I mean,
Which way did you say you turn it counterclockwise?
yeah. So when I'm doing it, right? When I made that first cut, this was the part that got beaten up, right? Then you saw when we turned it this way, this is the fresh edge. Now if I turn it counterclockwise, this part that was the fresh edge now becomes the part that's getting beaten up. The part that's beaten up goes completely out of play, and then I always have a new fresh edge.
Okay.
Make sense?
No, but
Well, just rotating it counterclockwise. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I do is I'll put a piece of tape on my tool. And see here that I've got a number 1. That meant I've rotated this tool 1 time. Here's the reason why. If you've used carbide tools, I've heard people say that, and I've had this run into it too, when I first started doing it, that they have a little bit of a problem with that screw. And it's never been a problem for me with the screw. The problem is, you know, I'm doing a glue boost finish, or I'm doing some finish on there, and then when I cut it to get it off, there's gunk in that screw. And that screw hole has to be clean for me to do the rotation on here. So what I'll do is I've got a little I've got a bottle of nail polish remover. And I'll actually literally take the tool, I'll dunk it in there, I'll wipe it off, and then that screw hole is perfectly clean, and then I can get the little wrench in there very easily, and I never have a problem with it once I started to do it that way. But the problem that you do have is that nail polish remover will make that cutter head look beautiful again, and it'll look brand new. And you won't know when you get to the 4th time around or the 5th time around or your rotations around. So I basically put the little piece of tape on here. All my tools have a little piece of tape on here. And that's how I know what I've got. Anybody else want to try this?
Come on, step
We
up.
just made a professional out of someone. We saw the cutting here. Oh, you know what? Here, seriously? Feel her cut where she was.
Oh,
Same
the
thing,
pressure is on you,
If you want to wear the
Kurt.
mask, you can wear the mask. If you don't, I'm fine with it. Yep, that's mine.
I don't know.
It's whatever Amazon had on sale when I went to buy it. I used to do that, the fully adjustable. So did
Kurt,
you
I
see
don't
what I'm
wanna
saying?
put-
So I would put it, make sure it's level, and if you want to do the peel cut, catch it there, and just walk your way across. If you want to do just any cut, do whatever cut you want.
You gonna peel this way?
Yeah, you can peel that way.
Where's your brush?
That's all cut.
Isn't that,
Try it.
if that's the worst problem that you have, is that you've got such a great cut. That was the worst problem that you have. And acrylic is typically the hardest thing to turn, right?
It's very easy. Almost glass-like.
Isn't it? So I don't know if you heard the comment. The comment was it's almost glass-like. So we made short work of an acrylic pen blank. So we're almost down to the end. So the question came up earlier about the design of the cutter head. These are the more traditional, this is the traditional carbide cutter head on here. And you can see if you look real close, I don't know if I can hold it where you want it. I'll just hold it here, see if you can get it in. It's kind of flat across the top, right? Can you see that? So compared to, oh, I should have dipped that one before I came in. Can you see the one on bottom is a negative rake? And can you see the slight difference? So there's a little bit of a degree of a bevel on it. So I never want to challenge anybody with this one, but what that bevel does is this makes this tool even safer. And I always say that it's almost impossible to get a catch, but I don't want to make that a challenge to anybody out there to try to see if you can get a catch on here. So just take my word that it's almost impossible to get a catch on these. The bevel out there gives me a nice little angle. So when would I use this tool versus the traditional? I like the traditional because you can see how quick I could get it down, and I could get it down to where I wanted to, especially on acrylic. If I'm doing just acrylic, then I would then switch to the negative rake cutter, and you see it's going to be a little slower to make that cut. It's going to be a little slower to make the cut. Go. I don't know if you can see the line going across it. I didn't know if you could see where my cut line was going. But can you see the significantly, once again, different set of shavings I got off it? Now I've got kind of like angel here, right? So I went from the chunky chips to the nice set of peels. And now I'm down to angel haircuts on here. So I do this, as I said, I don't work for Easy Wood turning tools, but I just love the tools, and that's how I got into this. I was at a demo in Rockler at their VIP night, and I was demoing pen making. And there was a woman next to me demoing, and she was demoing carbide tools. And she said, "Oh, I see you love using carbide tools." And I said, "Yeah, I love using carbide tools." And she said, "Oh, I'm Christy. I'm married to the president of Easy Wood turning tools. And she is just a phenomenal avid turner. If you don't know her, she's a blast to actually be turning next to. So she just does the same thing. It's just exciting. And so that's how I got to meet Chris and Christy. So I want to debunk a myth, because I watch a lot of Facebook posts on pen making, and we talk about this at the MPG and stuff like that. So people will say that, well, I can get the negative rate cutter, right? All I got to do is take the tool, and instead of being flat, go like that. And I'm getting the negative rate cutter. First and foremost, the geometry isn't right? This is not, you're not getting that same delicate cut. You're just getting something here. And I hate to tell you this. Now there's two other things in play, right? If I do get a catch, I've already pre-flipped the tool 50% of the way. So to me, that wouldn't be the same. And how many, if you turn, what's the most important thing with turning overall? Safety, yeah. But when you do it repetitively, it's muscle memory, right? Muscle memory is really important to me. Just as an aside, that's why I know for a pen maker, you'd think, well, this is kind of silly to use something this big. But I found when I do all my demos that a lot of places like this will give me these big lathes. And I was used to being on a much smaller lathe. And I remember it was at the AW in Atlanta, and I got behind one of these. I was scared out of my mind. I literally was, because what used to be here for me when I did all my cutting is now up here for me when I do all my cutting. And so the reason I bring that up and I point that out is if I was doing this, there's no way I can get a repetitive cut. There's no way that this angle will always be the same to get that repetitive cut in here. So no, a traditional tool tipped up on its angle is not a negative rate cutter. All right? We good on the negative rate cutters? Mm-hmm. So now let's take a look at, let's do wood quick. So I've got this nice little piece of wood. Let me get my other. Actually, I'll do maple so you guys can, if someone wants to cut, they can cut. You guys can talk amongst yourselves while I'm doing
Could you
this.
talk a little about the two pins and the headstock and the tailstock that you're using rather than a long steel rod?
Oh, okay, yeah. This is just a pen making thing. Just a complete aside. So Bob asked me about pen making. This is what's called a turn between centers mandrel. And this is all I use. I don't use the normal, the traditional long mandrels because, and I do classes on this, or you can check them out on my YouTube channel. But just to give you a quick overview, I don't use the long mandrel because you have to put pressure on there and they can bend and you'll get out of round turning. If I do this, you can see here, no matter how much pressure and how much I crank this open, this is not gonna bend. Sure. So this will not bend and I don't have to worry about ever getting an out of round cut on here. Make sense?
Is that a Easy Wood product? Or?
No, this one is not. No, they don't do anything. They'll do the chocks, but they don't do anything on the mandrels.
And where do you get those, Mark?
I get mine at Exotic Blanks.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So now, when you first start with this, did you notice that all my cuts with my finishing tool were, I go in, but then I'm moving this way. Then I go in and I'm moving this way. I think this is a, misnomer for people who just start out turning, that you think that the force is in, right? That I see something spinning and I want to put force in. And when I'm on a spindle, really most of my turning, when I'm doing pen turning, my force went that way or my force went this way, right? I put the tool in and then I use my body to go that way. Put the tool in, then I rotated it and I moved my whole body the other way. So there's always the exception that proves the rule, right? So now when I get to doing this pen, this wood blank, I'm going to use the square cutter. Can you see it here? And I'm only going to be introducing no more than 1/4 to 1/2 of the cutter head at any given time. And I'm going to plunge cut. And I could literally knock this whole thing down in about 30 seconds, but I'm only going to do a couple of them so that if someone else wants to try it out. So recapping, tool's always at that horizontal, right? Same thing with this tool. Nice thing about this tool, we can tell it's orange, right? So I know that I've got my rougher on here, or as I call them, the square cutter, always at horizontal. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to step cut this thing all the way in. I hit it with my elbow. I hit the button with my elbow. What do you think? Yeah. I could go all the way down, right? I would be done in 30 seconds. Kind of be a short demo if that's all I came in here to do, and showed you that I could get it done in 30 seconds. Once I get it down and round, I'll go to my finishing tool. I'll go to my finishing cutter and I'll make those other passes that I made. But it's just another tool in my arsenal, right? And if you want to hear a quick funny story on this one? My wife is an avid turner. And she likes to turn wood, but she likes to turn acrylic a lot more. So I did one of my 10 minutes to better pen making video on this tool. And I showed this technique. And I always have her watch my videos before I put them up online to just make sure that there's nothing weird. And I hate listening to my own voice, so she has to watch it. So she came up to me afterwards. She goes, "Why didn't you show me that technique?" And I went, "Why don't you come to any of my demos?" So it's a true story. And you know what? Here's another quick. Sorry, go ahead, please.
Can you only step turn with the square tool?
It's the only one that I do. Yeah. I wouldn't try to do it with the round one.
No, but is that the that wasn't? Is step turning the only thing you can do with that tool?
Oh no. Okay. If you noticed when I had, you probably didn't see it, but when I had it in, there's cutter heads on all sides. So then I moved back, and when I moved back, that took out that little bit of a ridge, okay. And I could actually cut if I wanted to that way into it.
Okay.
So. All right, so a little levity break. We want a little levity break. So I tell people, easy wood turning tools saved my marriage. And you know why? Because when my wife first started turning, she was using high-speed steel. And she would use my tools, and then I would come downstairs, and they'd be dull. And I'd have to sharpen. And I'd go, "Why don't you want to sharpen? You got to learn to sharpen." She goes, "No, that's not the fun part." So she never would sharpen it. So every time I would go downstairs, I would have to sharpen the tools. So then we got her a set of the pen making tools from the Easy Wood pen making tools. And so now she'll rotate it and stuff like that, which is fine. But now she actually enjoys turning, and she doesn't mind having to ask me to do the sharpening.
But he just put on there the plastic washer.
Yep.
Keep it from jamming on. Easy to get it off.
She's got a big piper and she can get it off.
See, the key would have been you'd say, you can't get them off, and now I've made a donation to the club. And then when I'm on 294, you got the pipe wrench out here, and you're going, look, we could get it off. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to turn, let's turn a little something like, this is going to be a small little pepper mill. And this one's only partway done, but I'm going to use it when I talk about the Yorkshire grit, so that's why I want to do that one last. I'm going to do this. So I've already, let's talk about the whole steps. Are we good for time and stuff? Are you guys having fun?
Yeah.
Is everybody still excited? Nobody went to sleep on me? All right. So this is how it started, right? 3 by 3 by 12. And let's say that I want to drill, right? I want to drill the holes in here. So this is an 1.5 inch hole on the bottom, and then an 1 1/16 inch hole goes all the way through. I love this chuck because you can do everything with it, and watch how quick things go. So when you guys use your what?
Okay. No, it's individual screws, 2 per.
Yep. So when you use a normal chuck,
Yeah.
you're going to have 2 screws per. You're going to have to unscrew it. Then you're going to have to go, okay, this is number 4, this is number 2, this is number 3, right? And I always have to take it off, right? I take it off my thing, and I sit there and so let's just do this. So let's say I want to do so I just want to show you how to drill, right? All right, so I got these jaws on here, right? So now I'm just going to take the tool. I'm going to put it in about a 45-degree angle, pull it out, take my next jaw, lock that in, and I'm done. So I got that jaw in there, right? I didn't have to, there's no numbering on here. You don't have to worry about it. I simply pop this one, pull it up, take my jaw, lock it, pop it, pull it out, take my jaw, lock it, pop it. No one's gonna finish it out by saying pull it off and take my jaw. And there we go. It's on. And I was able to change all that, right? Yep. And so now what I wanna do is I wanna drill. And you think, well, doesn't really fit. But if I put it at that 45, I can drill this in there. But the coolest part about this is, how many people on all those other ones, you gotta sit there, let's say that it's wide open. Right? Now if I put this in, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna fumble with it, and I'm gonna try to get that. The nice thing about this thing is it has a speed ring in here. So I can just speed it down, get it to where I want it, get that speed ring into where I want it, and then when I have it, get close, then I'm just gonna take it, and I'm gonna do the final couple turns on here. And I'm locked in. I can drill, right? And so what I would do is take a Jacobs chuck, pop it in here, and drill it, right? So then I have it drilled. And I might also take the time when I have it in here to get that nice round, right? I can round off this side, and then I can flip it over, round off the other side, right? So then, and I'll also face it. I'll sand it. So these are things I'm just gonna, it has nothing to do with the tools. It's just how I like to make pepper mills. I'll sand it at that point, right? So then that's probably gonna be the last time I'm gonna see this surface in the way that I want it. And then I'll sand the other side when I flip it around, and I'll always drill this side first, right? You always want to drill the biggest hole first, and then drill the smaller hole into it. If you do it the other way around, you draw the smaller hole, and then you try to drill the bigger hole into these pepper mills, you're gonna get a lot of fray on the inside where that hole is, right? So always drill the biggest hole first, and then go to your smaller holes on the way, right? So now I've got it all drilled, I've got it rounded, right? Well, now I want to turn it. And let me pull this out. So I want to turn this, right? Well, this is where I swear to you, just as a pitch on this stuff, this is where I think I'm much safer when I use this chuck because of all the time that it would take me to rig up something else, I would just not do it with the chuck. I'd figure out some other way to do it, and it probably is not nearly as safe as the way that I can do it when I have the chuck with the right tools. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna unscrew this, pop this out. I'm gonna pop it, pull it out, pop it, and now I'm putting on a different set of chucks again. Different set of jaws. I'm doing I think they call them officially the long jaws. I typically call them the pen making jaws. These work great for doing any kind of internal drilling also. But did you see how quick I was able to change all my jaws? Can't do that on anything else, right? And this is still there, right? I didn't have to take it off. So now, I'll use the speed ring to get it down a little lower. Notice I was able to do it just with my one hand. And I wish I was a little bit better at keeping my... This is what it's like at my house too, where I'm just constantly looking for tools and I'm thinking, I know I couldn't have lost the tool. I just had it 10 seconds ago.
It gets a lot worse in about 10 years.
I like to leave it a little bit loose here so that when I move my... Did you notice it popped up? It let it center itself on that one. Tighten it on. Tighten it on. Now I'm ready to turn, right? Not a lot of times spent playing with my chuck. So if I move this up here, which tool do I use? This one. Make sure that I'm centered, right? And so now let's talk a little bit, this is just a little free stuff, right? Design. When you're doing these little pepper mills or anything, right? We all know the magic numbers, like whatever it is, 1.6 something, whatever to 1, right? Basically it's 2 to 1, right? Rule of thirds. That's what makes things proportional or nice to look at. So I'm gonna do that little dip in there. So I'm gonna go down about 1/3 of the way, and I'm gonna give you that little dip in there. And then after that, everything else is gonna play off of that. Now, if I wanted to do that dip with, a traditional tool, right? These are your traditional spindle. This one's a bowl gouge, right? But if it was a spindle gouge, you put the tool in, you introduce it there, and then you're gonna rotate it. Then you're gonna go in, you're gonna get it the other way, and you're gonna rotate it. Watch how easy this is. So I am simply gonna take the tool, introduce it in there, and then I'm gonna just move my body a little bit, and I'm gonna make a pivot point, and I'm gonna get a really nice shape. Watch how, I don't wanna keep saying watch how quick I can do it because it's not a lot of fun just to be able to say you can do something quick, but it is kind of fun. See how I hit Bob? That was fun. Pretty easy to get that nice cove in there, right? It's a really consistent cove too. And since my helper's left, someone want to come up here and just feel how, anybody want to just see how smooth that cut is?
Come on, Denny.
Feel how smooth that cut is?
Gotta have a man up there.
Yep.
Come on.
So do you want to use the tool next?
Sure.
All right, so let me make the next cut,
Okay.
and then we're gonna do the tool next. Now I'm gonna just try to catch it here and shape it in.
Okay.
And then I'll let you actually do it. So I'll just show you what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna take it here, and I'm watching this side, right? I'm never watching one of my toolers. And I'm just gonna get it. I prefer that you do. But there's no, I specifically use Spectraply because you can see how the cuts are forming. And it's a lot more visual on the camera to see how I'm getting that nice consistent cut out of it. So take a couple cuts, tool at level.
And we're going in.
Yep,
We're keeping it level.
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, okay. As I said, I use the speed control.
Okay, speed control.
Your speed.
Just make sure when you introduce it that, yeah, go slow. And you're watching watch the profile develop on the other side.
Yeah.
What you think?
Yeah, easy, fast. You just gotta learn to watch here. Okay, you know, you're usually watching here, but you gotta learn to watch here.
I always what you're supposed, yeah.
Yeah.
So I am gonna just clean this up a little. Now I'm gonna make the bottom. What do you think? Pretty quick, pretty easy. Just as a technique, when I'm making all my pepper mills, just as in forms of a technique. Yeah, I gotta find my sandpaper. I know I brought some.
So there's no effort at all.
Just in terms of technique, design more. Did you notice I put a little bit of a lip down under here, a little rollover? You guys all, does everybody here know why? All right, so here's the reason why. If I take something and it's flat on bottom and I put it, it's heavy. There's nothing there. If I take something that has that little bit of a round on bottom, and I'll pull this one off, or this one. Yeah, this is better. There's a little round on bottom. If I put it on here, notice it looks like the piece floats. So it's not as heavy. This is really, really heavy because there's just your eye is going right to that.
Right.
This one you can't see where the piece is actually touching, so the piece looks like it floats. Just a little personal thing. So yeah, so I would literally just take the sandpaper. And yes, I'll clean your floors. And I'm not going to bore you with sanding because the next piece I'm going to sand. Are we all having fun? Yeah. Is this what you guys came for? Yeah. All right. Because I'm, so I probably would sand the top a little bit, maybe sand down here a little too. But what do you guys think?
Beautiful.
And it was easy, right? I didn't have to do a lot of work on figuring out that cove. And you pointed it out, right? The hardest thing with the tool is, but this you should be able to do this with high-speed steel too, is watch the profile develop on the other side. When I'm not focused in on the introduction of the tool and what angle I'm putting it in and knowing that I got to get that bevel to ride and stuff like that, I can focus everything here. My hand is going to take me to taking it wherever else I want to go. And so that's why I like doing this one. I love that. I love that for this. And if you notice, the nice thing about this with these long jaws, I could do it with a different set of jaws, but notice with the long jaws that I had enough room in here that I could put the tool in there, I could put my sandpaper in there, and you could see here, I've still got way more than enough expansion. And don't forget, from a safety perspective, I've got that in there. So if you look close, I've got all this room in here to be playing with that cutter to get it right where I want it. So are we good? All right. So let's go to the next. Let's take a look at the next thing that we're gonna have a little fun with. So this is half wood, half acrylic. And this was the piece that I started yesterday up in Wisconsin. So there's a flat edge on it and stuff like that. That's not gonna matter. I'm gonna cut some of that off now. And we're gonna then go to the sanding pastes. So once again, I tightened it up, lock it down, tighten it up. So this is a blank that I hand cast. These are one of my own casts. So I'm going to use the traditional tool first to just take off what I did yesterday. And then after that, I'm going to use the negative rake to give me a little bit of a cut on here. Now remember, as I said, and there is a commercial here. There's a great article in the AAW magazine of June this year that talks about how to cut these things that are hybrid blanks. So, where's my red one? So I'm going to just take off what I did yesterday first, and then I'm going to do just a hair with the negative rake. All right, I'm going to switch to the negative rake cutter. And you're going to see I'm not going to get as much peel out. I'm not going to get as much peel out of it, but I'm going to get better control. I'll crank it up a little bit. So you can see it's kind of clear, right? It's clean, right? So normally if I'm doing this one.
So what's that, half wood and half acrylic?
Yes, this is a piece of burl so I do all my own casting on this stuff. So it's a piece of burl. It's I'm gonna guess that's maple burl. And then I've got molds and I poured acrylic on it and I put it in a pressure pot for a couple hours. So and there's the best casting guy around is John Underhill, and so he just lives in Ottawa. If you guys ever want a session on casting, you may want to consider calling John. I think he's just the best around. All right, so normally we would sand this down and we would go through all this and then we go through micro mesh and all that other stuff. And that's what I would normally do. But I want to have a little fun. So I'm just going to take sandpaper. This is 100 grit. I'll walk through all my grits. I would normally, if this is a real nice piece, I'd go the other way on it. I'd stop on every one and I'd go the other way on it. But I think, this is kind of, I'm just gonna wait. I want someone to go ooh or ah when we do this one. So the old adage is, there's nothing worse than watching paint dry. There is. It's watching it turn or sand. I know that's more painful than watching paint dry. Because you actually have to watch me do it. All right. So you can do this one. I don't know if you want to stay where can you see it real well on the camera? Can you see there's little scratch lines in there? I would prefer, if you guys want, take a walk up here and take a look at this. Because this is going to be hard to get on the camera. Oh, that's yours. So can you see the little scratch lines in there? Now, normally if I'm doing this, I wouldn't do that, right? I would turn them all down and I'd make sure that I don't have any of that, But I want to show you the coolness of the product. So, I would normally spend just a little bit more time. This is Yorkshire grit. It's a sanding paste. It's not necessarily a finish. You can use it as a finish if you want to use it as a finish, but it's a sanding paste. So do we see the little marks in here? All right, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a pretty generous chunk, right?
Acts like sandpaper.
Yep. So I'm going to grab a pretty generous chunk and I'm going to wipe it in. And I'm only doing this top little part. So I'm wiping it in. Probably grab a little piece more. And you don't need to spend too much time getting it in there, right? Then I'm gonna take a clean piece and I'm gonna put the lathe, well, there's no speed indicator on here. Let's say 200 to 300. And I'm just gonna rub it. And you know what, and the more you use it, you'll actually feel the grit stop sanding. But I'm sanding here. Can you see the gunk? Mm-hmm. You guys, can you see where I'm at already?
Oh.
Right? Ooh, I guess someone had to do an ooh, right? Yeah. I can do another one if I want. And all I'm doing is rubbing it in.
So you would use this at the end of your sanding?
Yep. And so.
Not after micro mesh.
You can. You're going to see you don't need the knead for it.
Went through all that work.
Right. You don't need to have the knead. You'll find you don't need the knead for doing it. So I'm just going to take another fresh area. I'm going to do about 200. And just sit here and rub it in. No miracle. Together, I'm going to expect everybody to do ooh when I'm done.
Ooh.
Isn't that cool?
Wow. Yeah, that really.
And we had sanding marks on there, right? Mm-hmm. So now if I'm doing acrylic, I can go one step further. This is the microfine paste. Oh, one thing you should always do, this is something I didn't do and I don't do it at home too sometimes. I forget to put the cover back on here, and nothing's worse than having to pick sawdust out of this.
Okay.
And yeah, so I made that mistake. So can you see here, this has got a little bit different abrasive quality to it. And yes, there's still a little sawdust in there from the last time I made my mistake. But this is going to be a finer paste. And same concept. I put a nice.
Use both.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
You don't have to. You can, look at the finish on here, especially on the wood part.
Yeah.
If I'm only doing wood, I might not have to do this one. Here's the problem. I've got this stuff. I might as well do it. So now I'm just gonna rub this in. You know, I'm just trying to get some paste on it. I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time getting the paste on there. And this is this is a Easy Wood product. They bought it and it's now it's in their product line, and I just love this.
Is that the finish that's on these? Is that all?
So no, I do, just so you know, yeah. Let me do this
Okay.
one and I'll finish that. Or I'll talk about my finish on that one. So I'm just rubbing it in. I can see that I'm still getting sanding, if you will. It's hard to believe that we had that on there, right? So and if, you know, I do a little faster near the end. What do you think? So here's where we were. Here's where we have it. Go ahead, someone. Everybody wants to touch it, right?
Yeah, that's.
Nice.
Anybody else?
You can just live with that, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
and
Wow,
I'm going to
yeah,
say something
that's-
here, and I mean absolutely no disrespect. But anybody else be able to get that kind of finish on? You saw, what did it take?
Yeah,
What did I
that's
go?
gorgeous.
30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes on that, and then a little here, and just that finish is gorgeous on there.
Yeah.
And
How
so
durable.
I'm sorry?
How durable.
Remember, this is the sanding paste. So then what I do on these is then just shot them with lacquer afterwards. So that was the finish on here. There's lacquer on those
So
afterwards.
it's not
So
a finish.
It can't, well, it depends on what you want, right?
Okay, yeah.
There's no reason that you couldn't leave it like this, right? You said that we could. And you could leave it like this. But remember, it's a pepper mill. It's going to be in your kitchen. It's going to see a little bit more abuse. But if I'm doing a bowl, this one, that's all that's on there. That platter, all that's on there is Yorkshire grit. And that's a piece of walnut.
Wow.
So, and as I said, I just want to point out,
Nice, yeah.
I would spend a little bit more time sanding, but as Bob points out, you really don't have to. I would, I think everybody here would, but for getting a great finish on something, there's no way you don't want to do it. And two lucky people are going to be walking away. One's going to be walking away with a black one, and one's going to be walking away with a white one. And we'll do a random number. So if you don't have your name on the list, put your name up still on the list.
Oh, tonight, you're gonna give those?
Those
away
are, I'm going to
tonight?
give away those two.
Okay.
So any questions? I got one more thing I want to cover if you guys are willing to indulge me for about 5 or 10 more
Is that
minutes.
water resistant?
Sure.
No.
No,
No.
you can't use it on
Retire over that.
bills.
So I don't believe it. No, because if you look at the ingredients on it, I mean, it's pretty. It's mineral oil, beeswax, microfine abrasive powders.
Okay.
So once again, it's marketed as a sanding paste, but there's absolutely no reason that, you know, like on that one, that I couldn't just walk away from it right as is. So, all right. So I want to, if you'll indulge me for a few more minutes, I got one last thing I want to show you because I think it's really cool. As if everything else hasn't been really cool. Let's pull out this. So it's just a demo piece that. So remember, I said someone this was a demo piece, and I said never drill the small one first because you're going to get all those fibers. They drilled the small one first, and then went oops, and then drilled the big one. So can you see the fibers that are in there? So. I'm just going to let it lock up. So the last thing that I got is the beading cutter. And I love these. So I don't know if you want to, can you see this on here? So this is the Easy Wood beading cutter. And this is literally the first bowl I did when I was at Rockler. It was a demo bowl. And I had the bowl done. And I literally in front of everybody decided to use the beading cutter first, right in front of everybody. So that's the bowl that I did because I had just gotten the beading cutters the day before. So let's talk a little bit about how I use the beading cutters, and I'll bead this a little. So the beading cutter works on the CI2 and the square one. So this is the rougher, and this is the square one. So watch how easy, right? I'm just gonna take I would have normally dipped it, right, in my fingernail polish remover. The beading tools are, if you take a close look, they are negative rake already, right? So they're gonna be negative rake, and we're gonna be able to cut a nice little bead in there with it. So did you see, now all I did was I changed out my cutter head.
That's all I gotta do.
That's all I did. I unscrewed the other one, popped it in, cut it in. Or sorry, screwed it in, and I'm good. Now, this will take a little getting used to because, like even on this Spectraply or something, I find I don't want to just plunge this in there as quick as I can, right? I let people do it and they want to plunge it in really, really quick. I find that I'm in a little bit better shape if I introduce it a little bit of a corner and then I just roll it in so now both teeth are cutting or both edges are cutting, and then it's just going to be a little bit of a wiggle all the way down, and I'm watching the other side. Once I see that other side go in my profile, I know that I'm good. And then I can take, depending on which way I'm going to go, I'll then take this edge and put it in the groove. I'll take the left edge and put it in the right groove from my last cut. Make sense? Okay. All right, so can you, is it a good angle? Are we ready? So I'm gonna introduce the left edge. And now I'm watching the other side. If I would have picked a smaller cutter, it would have rounded it quicker, but I don't think you'd see it from where you're at. And we're almost at the profile I want. Then I can take the next edge. Tool still horizontal. And go back and freshen that a little. I'm trying to watch the other side. But walnut, I don't know how many of you guys turn walnut, but walnut does have a tendency to tear out. And if you look at my cuts, I don't see any tear out on it. Do you? Yep, I don't see any tear out on it. And I could bead the rest of this as much as I want. As I said, I probably would have used a slightly smaller bead on something here, and then I wouldn't have had to go in as deep. But for you guys to be able to see it on TV, I chose something that's a little bit bigger.
And those come in a set of bits? Or
no, each one of these come individual. There's four different ones,
sizes.
4 different sizes on it. And yeah, I find, and you can take a look at them. I do have all of them back here. You want me out of the way?
No, I wanted both of them.
Oh, okay.
Got a nice
That
background.
and that.
Okay, here, let me do it this way.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like a brick wall.
Thank you.
Does the inside of the curve cut, or does that's just where you stop?
No, the whole inside cuts. This is all a cutter head in here.
Even that?
Yep.
You pass that tool around maybe later, or?
You can pass it around now. If you guys promise just not to poke your neighbor with it.
Just don't drop it on the point.
So that was kind of what I wanted to cover, right? So I covered carbide tools. I covered,
You got 22 seconds.
left.
Hour and a half.
So I covered the carbide tools, right? I went over some myths, right, about whether they're actually a cutter or a scraper. We looked at shavings, that one shaving was 6 feet tall. So that's why I used the tool. I talked about technique. I talked about making sure that everything is always level and that we're always cutting on the center part, right? Talked a little bit then about the negative rate cutter, right? And when I use it. I'm gonna do it on any time that I'm gonna go into acrylics. There's no difference in terms of, you can do both with both, but what you'll find is that if you go to that negative rate cutter, it's gonna be just a little bit less aggressive, and you find that I just love it for doing any kind of detail work or any of this half wood, half acrylic. Then we looked at the chuck. Nice thing about the chuck was all the jaws. We saw that we could pop the jaws on and off. We could leave it on the lathe. I popped the jaws on and off, and I didn't have to worry about all the set screws and looking for screws and stuff like that. In terms of maintenance, we also said that, the fingernail polish or the acetone next to it, give it a nice quick dip in it. The screw is not the problem. The problem is you were doing something and we got gunk in the screw. And so that hex head can't get it. And then not finally, but then we looked at Yorkshire grit and how it's a sanding paste. And I purposefully left scratch marks in there, right? And then we were able to knock them off, running the lathe at about 200 to 300. And then I went through, because I like both, because I have both grits, I like to go through the both grits. But if I was just doing wood, I could probably get away with not having to do the microfine. And then finally we did some beads. So, any questions? Go ahead, sir.
2 questions.
Sure.
This is a CI2.
Yep.
Are all the heads CI2s, or they vary?
For the beading cutters right now, it's the CI2.
Okay, so any of the bead sizes fit on a CI2.
Yes.
Okay, second question. It looks like there's a slight negative.
It is a negative rake.
Okay.
Yeah. So you've got me till you want to kick me out, but any questions, comments, something you want to know?
I got a question.
Sure.
All carbide tools the same? What's easy wood better than the other ones?
Once again, now we can only talk personal preference. I think easy wood are the best out there, and that's my personal preference on it. There's nothing wrong with the other ones, but I find in terms of usability, versatility, the color handles, there's just a lot of things in there to me that make them the best. And so yeah, I can tell you this flat out, and this is not a lie. I had a different set about 6 or 7 years ago, and I gave them to my neighbor when he started to turn, and this is all I use. Once again, I don't work for Easy Wood, so I can just talk. I'm telling you the God's honest truth. Yeah, are they all made the same? I don't think so. I love the fact that these are stainless steel. They're all made in the United States, and I think the cutter heads are appropriately priced. They're not cheap. They're not expensive. They're appropriately priced. Yes, sir.
The tool that's laying there facing away from you?
This one?
No, middle. Right.
This one?
Yeah. That's one of the longer set, isn't it?
So this one, yeah, this one, if I had more time, this is the
a hook and a big
yeah,
spear hook.
this is the ones that you're going to use for doing any kind of hollowing and stuff like that. So this one, because of this cut here, this is not going to go in nearly as far as some of the other ones, but you can get the longer ones. But what I do like, and I would have talked about this if I had a little more time, is I do like this smaller cutter head. So if I'm doing an inside of a bowl or like this thing, I switch to this. I know you think, well, this is overkill for something like that, but I can get such nice, precise accuracy when I've got this going. I get that really nice, precise cut on here, and there's just a lot more versatility, right? I can do a lot more because this head is smaller than on that bigger head. I basically have just what I have. But on that bigger head, you did see on the pepper mill, it's so nice to just, right? It's geometry, right? If I make this my pivot point and I go like this, I'm going to get something that's going to be kind of a circular or a hemisphere or whatever I want. So I utilize that pivot point a lot on that circular cutter, and that's why, or the finisher, that's if I only had one tool, that's why I have it. The nice thing about using this one, the round tool here, is when we were doing the pens at first, If you've ever seen my pen demos, I'll talk about how I'll use this cutter to find my edge of my bushing and pull back in, find my edge of my bushing and pull back in, and I get that perfect cut on my bushings, but I always use this cutter on it. Did I answer your question fully?
Yep. The longer tools, I guess they just have the smaller head to reduce the amount of cutting you're doing to make it safe.
Yeah.
It'd be harder to use a bigger diameter.
Well, as I said, I've got one, and I just find that I hate to do it as an analogy, right? But I'm going to have to do an analogy, right? If you go into, how many people here come from flat work, right? And you go to the part of the store where they're selling table saw blades, and you can get a rip blade, you can get a crosscut blade, you can get a melamine blade, you can get a plywood blade. Yeah, combination, but you can get melamine, you get one specific for cutting plywood, you get all. Same with the tools. I think once you get, here's what I want to do, and if this happens, please tell Tom. If someone goes out and actually does this, and there was any kind of inspiration for love of the game, and you went out and you tried the tools, or you went out and you turned something that you didn't have, then I've done my job. My job really is to just try to encourage. So it's a long-winded answer to what I just gave to you, but yeah, the tools, you'll find that there's personal preference. And if you decide that I only can buy one tool and this is the one that I got, you're still safer and it's easier to be turning that bowl. But then you'll go, well, you know what? Maybe I do want to try doing some hollowing. Well, then I'm going to get that one. And then if I get that one, you go, well, you know what? Mark said I could do it on the inside of a bowl, and maybe you try it on the inside of a bowl. So that's all I'm saying. I mean, it was a long-winded answer. That's why my videos are 10 minutes to better pen making, because my intro is 10 minutes.
Is there anything you would go back to steel for?
Yeah, it all depends. I don't know anything offhand, because being honest, I only do peppermill small bowls and and as you know me, if anybody doesn't know, I'm predominantly pens, right? I think I probably do between 1,000 and 1,500 pens a year. Wow. And so I'm predominantly pens. So if you ask me, would I ever go back to high-speed steel for that? No way in heck.
I didn't mean that. I mean, is there...
I don't, but I also don't want to say don't. I mean, here's the deal. If you pick up one of these because you're going to do some spindle work, more power to you. If you love your bowl gouge and that's the bowl gouge you use for your bowls, stick with it. I can't answer that question. I can just say right now, I can't tell you the last time I picked up a high-speed steel tool. Okay, I will. I will admit that I used to use a high-speed steel parting tool, but now that I got one of the Easy Wood parting tools, I don't go back to this one. That's the closest I'd be. And if anybody's so I've got PVC pipe here, and if anybody wants to know, yes, there is styrofoam on the bottom of the bowl to protect the cutter heads as I put them back in there. So I don't let them just bounce. Go ahead.
Check it out, Danny.
Is there styrofoam in the bottom?
Yeah, I mean, that's nice to get.
Yep, so there's styrofoam in the bottom, so it lets me put my cutter heads all back in there without having to worry about it.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, I don't know if your meeting...